No one expected the cleaner, Elara Vance, to be the one to unravel the true enigma. Much less would anyone imagine that, on that peculiar morning, she would make the most discreet, yet the most crucial decision of her existence. It was precisely 6:42 a.m. when Elara Vance emerged from the elevator, stepping onto the 23rd floor of the imposing Apex corporate spire. The vast space was still immersed in a gloom, cut only by the cold glare of emergency lights, which reflected off the polished marble floor. An almost deafening silence hung in the air. Not a single footstep, not the slightest whisper of a voice, only the soft squeak of her cleaning cart's wheels, a familiar and solitary sound. She pulled on her rubber gloves with a firm and determined gesture, adjusting them on her fingers, and began wiping down the long corridor, heading towards the opulent conference rooms. The exhausting routine of her job barely managed to push away the cloud of thoughts awaiting her after work. Her mind was buzzing with silent worries. The pharmacy wouldn't open until 9 a.m., and her mother Lyra's last morphine patch had run out the previous night. Lyra Vance had had a terribly difficult night, marked by incessant coughing fits, a weakness that consumed her, and that unsettling tremor that paralyzed Elara, leaving her wondering if it would be the last time. The tiredness Elara felt didn't just come from the physical labor of cleaning. She had long been accustomed to that. It came from the weight of imposed silence, the complexity of a double life lived daily, the suffocating expectation of having to show gratitude for a job where they didn't even look her in the eye, where she was treated like a shadow. No one there in the ostentatious Apex corporate spire had the slightest idea that Elara held a doctorate from the prestigious Ethelgard University, that she spoke 5 languages fluently, including complex Arabic, that she had once dreamed of working for a renowned international organization, perhaps the Global Harmony Initiative or Zenith City. No one knew that she had filled out and redone countless applications, faced interviews where she was treated with due respect, only to ultimately see someone else chosen. "You are indeed impressive, Miss Vance, but we are looking for someone with a slightly more suitable profile for this position." The word suitable usually meant better connected, or, more crudely, from a higher social background. Elara, exhausted from searching for reasons and justifications, stopped trying. She pushed the cleaning cart through the glass door of the Olympus room, the largest on the floor, which offered a panoramic and stunning view of all Viridia City, the city that stretched out beneath her feet. The metropolis lights still flickered, announcing the dawn. She inhaled the strong scent of the cleaning product, as if it were a vital breath of oxygen, an essence that kept her awake and alert. On the vast and gleaming mahogany table, some papers were carelessly scattered. Technically, it was strictly forbidden for her to pay attention to anything there, or even to look. However, a bold word on the cover of one of the documents jumped out at her, instantly capturing her attention. Omnicorp Insights. She froze. A second glance, now conscious and more detailed, revealed even more crucial information. Significant parts of the document were written in Arabic. Elara immediately understood the situation. It was an ambitious project proposal, focused on cutting-edge technological infrastructure, intrinsically linked to urban digitalization, including the installation of advanced sensors, the integration of state-of-the-art artificial intelligence, and the development of complex data interfaces for seaports. With almost reverent care, she sat at the head of the table, the damp cleaning cloth still in her hand. Her eyes scanned the pages with the same impressive speed she had acquired during her university years. Among technical terms like smart data grid, automated warehouse logistics, and predictive maintenance, Elara felt a growing unease within her. She knew that wouldn't be just any meeting. She returned the sheet to the pile of documents with the same discretion with which she had taken it, upon hearing footsteps approaching. She quickly stood up, pulled the cleaning cart to the room's door, and pretended that nothing unusual had happened, that she hadn't even noticed anything. Inside, however, something was simmering. Why was such a sensitive document lying open on the table? Who was the investor behind such a grand project? And why, with all the knowledge she possessed, was she still there, with rubber gloves, a bucket of soap, and a cloth in hand, cleaning? Outside, muffled voices could be heard. Elara recognized one of them immediately, Theron Kyle, the operations manager. The tone of his voice was distressed, laden with despair. "He arrived early, do you understand? And the damn translator just won't show up." A cold shock ran through Elara's chest. She stopped in the doorway, almost breathless, her heart pounding. "But does he really not speak English?" another voice asked. "He understands English," Theron replied, his voice full of frustration. "But he insists on negotiating in Arabic, says he can identify lies much more clearly in his native language." Elara closed her eyes for an instant. She could translate every word, every nuance, every inflection of the voice. And no one there, absolutely no one, had the slightest idea. Her heart raced uncontrollably, and her fingers trembled slightly as an audacious thought began to form in her mind. I could help. But almost immediately another thought struck her forcefully. No one will take me seriously. She was still standing in the same spot when the glass door of the Olympus room abruptly opened and Theron Kyle hurried in, a look of panic on his face. He barely registered her as he passed, hastily uttering, "Can you finish cleaning later? We need the room now." Elara nodded mechanically, picked up the trolley, and retreated into the corridor. But that ephemeral moment had already transformed her in some irreversible way. On the outside, nothing had been said. On the inside, however, something powerful and long dormant had awakened. As she walked down the corridor, the weight of the bucket in her left hand seeming amplified, and the hum of her own pulse echoing in her ears, Elara felt a magnetic force in her chest. A silent decision was forming, though she still didn't dare verbalize it. The glass door to the room was closed, but through a tiny crack, voices inside could be heard. One of them was deep and calm, with a distinctly familiar accent. Perfect Arabic, refined by education and life. Zaid El-Hassan spoke with a quiet authority that obviated any need to raise his voice. "If I cross the ocean, I expect, at a minimum, that the documentation is complete and in order," he said, slowly with emphasis on each word. A tense silence settled inside the room. Outside, Elara held her breath. She understood every word spoken, and she knew with absolute certainty that no one else in that room shared that understanding. Theron Kyle's voice, distressed and laden with nervousness, emerged, masked by a forced and awkward laugh. "Of course, Mr. Al-Hassan, we will provide everything immediately." Empty words, Elara thought. A desperate effort to try to save a first impression that was already irretrievably lost. Elara was still standing next to the cabinet she was supposed to empty, her hands on the handle of the cleaning trolley, her fingers trembling, her mind in a whirlwind of thoughts. She could help. Only she at that moment could save the situation. But the phrase, "I speak Arabic," choked in her throat, blocked by years of accumulated frustrations, by countless denied applications, and by superficial compliments, always followed by the cruel caveat, "inadequate profile." No one had ever even asked if she spoke other languages. No one had truly heard her. At that instant, Theron Kyle rushed out of the room, his gaze lost and his cell phone glued to his ear. "Find someone who speaks Arabic, now!" he bellowed, passing Elara without even noticing her, as if she were invisible. He was so close that she smelled his aftershave, and yet she was completely invisible. She pushed the cleaning trolley toward the elevator. The door closed with a soft hum, the internal light flickered for an instant, and suddenly everything fell into a deep silence. No voices, no hurried footsteps, just the soft hum of the corridor's neon and the accelerated rhythm of her own heart. She stopped the trolley, looked at her own hands, and then raised her gaze to the mirror on the ceiling. There she was, 31 years old, deep dark circles under her eyes, a lifetime of unspoken words and unheard voices. She knew what she needed to do. Her feet began to move even before her thoughts could catch up. Back in the room, she opened a tiny crack in the door. She saw Zaid alone, standing by the window, his hands clasped behind his back, observing the dazzling skyline of Viridia City. For a brief moment, she hesitated. But then, with renewed determination, she entered the room. The door closed behind her, making no sound. "Excuse me, Mr. Al-Hassan," she said in Arabic, her voice calm but firm. He turned slowly. His eyes did not measure her with disdain or contempt, but with genuine and respectful curiosity. "I'd like to know if you need anything while you wait." His eyebrows rose slightly, and an almost smile appeared on his lips. "Do you speak Arabic?" he asked, without averting his penetrating gaze. Elara nodded. "Fluently. I studied linguistics at Ethelgard University and spent a semester at the Petra Institute." A brief silence followed, charged with expectation. "So, you work here?" "In building cleaning," she replied, holding his gaze with unwavering dignity. Zayed remained silent for a moment, thoughtful, and then said, in a low voice, almost to himself, "Sometimes the most useful skills hide in the most discreet and unexpected places." Something stirred in Elara's chest, not yet pride, but the soft sigh of a hope that had been silenced for too long. The door opened again. Theron Kyle entered the room, accompanied by Serafina Dubois, the Director of International Relations. Both froze upon seeing Elara sitting at the table. What are you doing here?" Serafina asked, her voice tense and her brow furrowed. Zayed turned to them and replied with unwavering confidence, "We are talking, and I would very much like Ms. Vance to remain with us." Theron exchanged incredulous glances with Serafina. "But she is not authorized to participate in business meetings." Zayed remained serene, his voice firm. "She is the only one here who speaks my language, and from what I perceive, she seems to have understood the project much better than your analysts." A heavy silence settled in the room. Zayed then pulled out a chair and motioned for Elara to sit down. Her legs trembled slightly, but she sat with surprising composure. Serafina cleared her throat, trying to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Al-Hassan, we can speak in English if you prefer." He shook his head with a decisive gesture. "I negotiate multi-million-dollar values in a language where I feel everything, not just half. My business is personal." Then, addressing Elara, "Are you ready to translate? Word for word, without losing a single detail." She nodded, her voice firm. "Yes, sir." And so, the unusual began. The atmosphere in the room changed drastically. Elara was now sitting at that mahogany table where, just an hour earlier, she had been wiping it down. She listened intently, translated with impeccable precision, observed every gesture and expression, and the more she spoke, the more the others fell silent, not from surprise, but from a genuine respect, for the first time. Outside, Viridia City awoke under the light of the rising sun. Zayed had invited her to the table, and she had accepted, although her hands still trembled slightly under the polished wood. Her voice, however, remained firm and clear. It was intense concentration, worthy of an oral exam that would decide much more than a simple grade. In front of her were several pages with intricate technical descriptions, detailed plans, complex tables, and market forecasts. She immediately recognized the structure of the documents. Key words typical of her field of study: digital interfaces, massive data flows, port automation. Terms she had exhaustively analyzed during college when she still dreamed of being part of the European Commission. Zayed asked precise, direct questions without any pleasantries or beating around the bush. He wanted to know what Elara thought of the proposed infrastructure, if the realistic numbers matched the expected data volume, if the integration of artificial intelligence into port logistics was indeed practical and efficient. Elara answered without hesitation, without circumlocution. The Year 2 model is too optimistic. They haven't considered a realistic failure rate, neither for the sensors nor for data transmission. He raised his eyebrows slightly, impressed. "You grasped that in just 5 minutes of reading?" She merely nodded, with serene confidence. "I have practice in speed reading and data analysis." Theron Kyle returned to the room, accompanied by 2 senior managers.
Their steps abruptly halted upon seeing her sitting with authority, being listened to attentively. Theron was the first to compose himself, though with visible difficulty. "We can provide all documents in English. Our team of analysts is ready to assist." Zayed leaned back in his chair with the air of someone who had already made up his mind. "I think I am very well informed, thank you. Ms. Vance has been of enormous help, much more than I expected." The silence that followed had a palpable, almost overwhelming weight. Elara felt it on her shoulders and in her throbbing temple. She said nothing, but inside, she was more awake and alive than ever.
They had never heard her like this, responding to what she knew, to her vast intelligence, and not to what she wore or her social standing. Even when Theron repeatedly tried to steer the conversation back to protocol and formalities, Zaid naturally redirected it, as it was the most sensible and productive path. He handed her another document. "Could you summarize the regulatory framework section of the Azure Coast region for me?" She read quickly, studied the clauses, and spoke, with surgical precision, clearly and structured. "There is a strict environmental impact assessment requirement before construction begins, but international consortiums can accelerate the process through the active participation of local public bodies." Zaid looked at her briefly with a calm that denoted deep understanding and told the group this crucial information was missing. The air in the room became even denser, almost suffocating. Theron Kyle took a step back. The other executive pretended to write something in his notepad, but could barely take his eyes off Elara, visibly shocked. Serafina Dubois entered the room with a folder in her hands and a tense smile on her face. "Good morning, Mr. Al-Hassan. I am Serafina Dubois, Director of International Cooperation at Luminacorp." Zaid nodded and pointed to Elara. "There is a remarkable and surprising talent in this house." Serafina blinked, confused and incredulous. Theron hastened to intervene. "Elara is part of the cleaning staff, but she is very dedicated, Mr. Al-Hassan." Zaid was unimpressed, his expression unchanging. Dedication sometimes is not enough. What truly matters is competence, and she is demonstrating it spectacularly. Elara's face flushed slightly, not from embarrassment, but from something resembling a quiet pride, long dormant and forgotten. The presentation continued. Zaid decided to address the remaining agenda items with Elara's essential help. She translated, mediated conflicts, analyzed complex data and terms. Now the important documents were also placed in front of her, not just in the hands of the executives. With each passing minute, the tacit hierarchy of the room seemed to shift, subtly, almost imperceptibly, but palpable and undeniable. As the sun streamed through the immense glass and bathed Viridia City's skyline in a golden light, Zaid stepped aside and faced her directly. "Would you agree to meet me tonight? I'd like to talk, outside of here, about other possibilities I envision for you." She looked at her, surprised, but with a newfound firmness. "With pleasure, Mr. Al-Hassan." He nodded and concluded, "That's enough for today." Theron stood up abruptly, visibly displeased. "We will review the documentation and send the complete version to you today." Zaid said nothing. His gaze rested on Elara for a moment, and then he left the room, his steps calm and assured. When the door closed, there was a second of absolute silence. Elara remained seated, looking at the table. No one dared to speak. She slowly stood up, gathered her notes, unfamiliar sheets that somehow she had made her own, and headed for the door. Theron intercepted her in the hallway. "That was very unusual, Elara. We'll talk later." She didn't respond. Her fingers held the binder that wasn't hers, and which, of everyone there, only she truly understood in its entirety. Outside, the hallway was bright and luminous. Employees exited the elevator, carrying coffee cups, chatting idly about the weather. Elara walked past them, calm, with a step that no longer felt heavy like an hour before. Something profound had stirred within her. She knew it.
That newfound electricity lingered on her skin, as if the very fabric of her soul had changed. Her steps on the polished floor of the Apex corporate spire sounded strange, too light for someone who had just faced so many critical and surprised gazes. No one approached her, but she felt the quick glances, which hastily darted away when she met them. As she crossed the glass exit door, Elara saw her own reflection. The same woman, the same modest clothes, but not the same posture. The rest of the meeting had been like the test, but not for her. Zaid alternated between Arabic and English, as if to test not only her language fluency, but also her reaction and adaptability. The topics discussed became more complex: cloud-based port control, machine learning for predicting vessel turnaround times, large-scale autonomous container transport. She did not hesitate. Her answers were clear, her translations precise and instantaneous. The initial irritation on the managers' faces gave way to something else she barely remembered: respect. Timid, tentative, but undeniably true. Magnus Thorn, the president of Lumina Corp, arrived late, accompanied by 2 assistants.
When he realized who was speaking with such authority, he frowned, visibly confused, but did not ask. Finally, when Zaid thanked him and proposed to deepen the conversation with Elara in a more suitable environment, the president of Lumina Corp finally spoke. "Excuse me, Mr. Al-Hassan, may I know what Miss Vance's position is here at the company?" Theron Kyle replied too quickly with a defensive tone. "She's from building maintenance, Mr. Thorne. She's been with us for 8 months. Magnus Thorne did not reply. He just nodded slowly and observed her, surprised, deeply surprised, with wide eyes. Elara changed her clothes in the locker room, put the small notebook in her bag, and went to the bus stop. Her fingers fumbled in her coat pocket for her mother's prescription. She had almost forgotten. It was 10:47 a.m. If she hurried, there would still be time to get to the pharmacy before it closed for lunch. Her legs felt heavy, but her head was clear, clearer than ever. Numbers, complex technical terms, entire sentences in Arabic spun within it. And amidst it all, the way Zaid had looked at her, not with condescending curiosity, nor with disdain, but with genuine openness, as if it were absolutely natural for her to be in that place, exercising her intelligence. The bus was crowded, stuffy. A child cried inconsolably in the back. A teenager listened to loud music without headphones, oblivious to everything. Elara, squeezed between 2 starched suits. No one knew her. No one knew she had just given a multi-million-dollar project its saving breath. The pharmacist recognized her immediately with a sympathetic smile. "Oh, Miss Vance, for your mother again?" Elara nodded, her voice low. "Today, morphine patch, please, and the cream for neuropathic pain." The clerk fell silent for a second and lowered her voice, concerned. "How is she?" "Worse than last week," Elara said, almost in a whisper. "But she tries to be strong, not to worry me." On the way back, a strange, sleepless fatigue overwhelmed her. She walked up 3 flights of stairs. The elevator again was broken. She opened the door slowly, her heart heavy. The soft beep of the infusion machine sounded low, a constant reminder of life's fragility. Lyra, her mother, slept peacefully. Elara left the groceries in the small kitchen, took off her shoes, and sat at the tiny table. In the corner, the letter from the city hall, another bill for the overdue electricity. On the refrigerator door, a note written in her own hand. Zaid, 7 p.m., Grand Celestial Hotel. The evening itself scheduled by her. She took a quick shower, changed her clothes, chose a simple gray sweater and black pants, discreet, appropriate, not drawing attention. She didn't want to stand out, she just wanted to listen. Lyra had woken up, her eyes glazed but lucid, staring at her. "You have that expression you had before presenting an important paper in college," her mother murmured, her voice weak. Elara smiled, a tired but tender smile. "I'm meeting someone, a new job." Lyra nodded, understanding. "Go and say what you have to say, my daughter. You have a lot to offer the world." She kissed her mother's forehead and left. The Grand Celestial Hotel was warm, quiet, and clearly expensive. She identified herself at the reception and was led to the lush winter garden. Zaid was already at the table,
a pitcher of water and 2 glasses in front of him. Seeing her, he stood up in a gesture of respect. "Miss Vance, thank you for coming." She returned the greeting. "You said you wanted to talk about possibilities." He remained silent for a moment, thoughtful. "I've been CEO of Omnicorp Insights for 10 years. I've seen hundreds of profiles, had dozens of conversations, but rarely so much substance and depth in so little time." She just listened, attentive. His gaze was firm, serene, but filled with seriousness. "I want you to work with us, not as an assistant, nor as a translator. I need someone who builds cultural bridges, who understands complex systems, and, above all, who understands people." Her voice trembled slightly. "And you really believe I can do that?" He smiled, a genuine and welcoming smile. "I saw you in action, I'm sure." A waiter brought the menu. She could barely read the options. She took a sip of water, slowly, to calm her nerves. "What exactly do you have in mind for me?" Zaid took an elegant envelope from his brief. "A provisional contract. I want you to represent us in crucial negotiations in Portum Bay. Afterwards, we'll see what the future holds for us." She didn't take the envelope immediately. Her fingers rested on the table, her heart noisy and racing. Zaid waited, patient, unhurried, without any apparent expectation, just present, observing her. Finally, she looked up, a mixture of uncertainty and hope. "I need to think, but thank you for the proposal and for the trust you place in me."
Let me know when you're ready to decide. The night ended in eloquent silence, without formal handshakes, without grand words, just a look that contained what was yet unnamed, a future. On the way back home, in the biting cold of the night, with the envelope pressed against her chest, Elara knew something had opened up inside her, and this time she wouldn't let it close again. On the tram, the city raced by on the other side of the fogged-up glass. She had eaten little, spoken little. The night paraded through her mind like a slow-motion film. The envelope felt heavy, not just materially, but as a new reality, unsolicited and suddenly present in her life. The familiar street corners, the lampposts she saw every day, the facades of the buildings were the same, and yet everything seemed strange, as if her perspective had shifted a centimeter, altering her view of the world. At home, the door seemed louder than usual when it opened. The smell of chamomile and disinfectant hung in the air. A dry cough came from her mother's room. Elara left her bag in the kitchen, took off her shoes, and went to the bedroom door. Lyra was awake, eyes half closed, streaks of light from outside reflecting on her pale face. "You took a long time," Lyra whispered, her voice frail and weak. Elara knelt beside the bed and held her mother's hand, which was cold. "I had dinner with him." "With the Arab?" "Yes, Zaid." Lyra stared at her for a long time, said something low and inaudible. Elara shook her head, as if admitting her own confusion. "I don't know either, Mom." She took the envelope from her bag and carefully placed it on the nightstand. Lyra watched it for a while and slowly closed her eyes, as if absorbing the new reality. Later, in the silent kitchen, a glass of water in her intertwined hands, Elara thought of the moment Zaid had led her to the table at the hotel. The warm ambient light, the city's sparkling skyline, a solitary white rose on the table, gleaming crystal glasses. Zaid had listened to her with profound calm, no probing questions, just to truly understand. "What brought you to Viridia City?" "Necessity, Mr. Al-Hassan, not a dream." She told him about Lyra, about the long years of waiting for an opportunity, about the countless interviews that never led to anything, about the overwhelming exhaustion of having to prove over and over again that she was enough, and about the silent anger that over time had turned into bitter resignation. Zaid did not disagree, did not pity her, did not console her with ready-made empty phrases. He just nodded, slowly, understanding every word and emotion. Then he said, "I want you to create an entirely new area in my company, intercultural communication, a vital bridge between systems and people. You have the unique talent and the keen insight for it." She stared at him, surprised, skeptical, but deeply touched by the words. "Why me, Zaid?" "Because you know what it's like not to be heard, and because you know how to speak with clarity and authority without needing to shout." The phrase was etched into her soul. A noise from the room pulled her from her thoughts. The glass of water had fallen to the floor. Her mother's hand trembled uncontrollably. Elara helped her, cleaned up the mess. "It won't get better, daughter," Lyra whispered, her voice laden with sadness. "I know, Mom, but maybe you shouldn't just be here, taking care of me." Lyra's gaze didn't ask for permission. It let go, liberated. In that moment, Elara understood. The decision she so feared was already made, not out of excessive ambition, but out of an intrinsic need to be who she was, not just for herself, but for what lay ahead, for new opportunities. In the early morning, before the sun even rose on the horizon, Elara stood in the living room with her phone in her hand. She had Zaid's number, but had never dialed. Now she called. 2 rings, and his voice, awake, calm, professional. "I accept the proposal," she said, without hesitation, with renewed confidence. A brief silence followed, then a low, sincere, "Thank you." "When do I start?" "Today, if you wish." The next day passed in a dizzying whirlwind. Documents to sign, a quick video conference with the Omnicorp Insights team in Canalberg, a clarifying conversation with the company's HR. They created her corporate email, prepared her access badge. She took the subway to a modern building in Viridia City's West End. They showed her a temporary office, small, bright, with a serene view of a leafy chestnut tree. She placed her bag on the desk, took a deep breath, turned on her laptop. Zaid's first email arrived. "Welcome aboard, Elara." At night, at home, Lyra slept peacefully, her face serene. The monitor of the device blinked green, a sign of life. Her breathing was shallow but calm. Elara sat beside the bed, placed her hand on hers, and said nothing. There was nothing to say. Just the silent knowing that everything had begun and that nothing would ever be the same again. Ever. The house seemed darker now. Not because of the closed curtains, but because something that brought light was missing. Even without an open window, a presence. The kitchen chair was slightly crooked, as if someone had just gotten up. On the bookshelf, Lyra's reading glasses, forgotten the night before. Elara picked them up, looked at them for an instant, and put them away in the top drawer, at the back, as if she needed to hide them from herself, from her pain. The wake was silent, intimate. No long speeches, no choir singing hymns, just a light wind whispering among the cemetery trees, and a few old cleaning colleagues beside her, offering silent support. No one spoke much. Lyra wouldn't have liked a fuss. Zaid couldn't attend, but there were dazzling white orchids and a handwritten card. To start something new, sometimes you have to say goodbye to what shaped us and brought us here. Elara carefully folded the card and put it in her coat pocket. The words were already etched in her memory and in her heart. In the following days, she functioned mechanically, waking up, washing her face, getting dressed, taking the subway, going to the office, answering emails, participating in endless video conferences, taking flights back. In Canalberg, she received an important delegation from Kaimar. In Portum Bay, she mediated a complex workshop on human-machine interfaces in maritime logistics. At night, hotel beds too soft or too hard, unfamiliar ceilings, waiting for a feeling that wouldn't come, an emptiness. Just the incessant rhythm, the next appointment on the agenda. She barely spoke of her brief. Zaid offered her a week of leave. She refused, not out of immense strength, but out of a deep fear of what silence would do to her, of the sadness that could consume her. Movement was controlled, and controlled, now, was all she had left. Zaid became more careful and attentive. He didn't ask direct questions about her well-being, but his eyes observed every detail.
every expression. In meetings, he let her speak. During breaks, he stood beside her without saying a word, just present. In Portham Bay, on a rainy morning, his first comment was, "It's good that you came." No mention of delays, no allusion to the recent weeks of mourning, just that calm that permeated and comforted her. At the conference, a constant buzz, haste from all sides. Elara moderated a crucial panel on artificial intelligence in port management, automated logistics, advanced predictive models, cloud data security. As she spoke, she glanced at Zaid once. He was at the edge of the room, arms crossed, his forehead slightly furrowed in concentration, eyes that listened intently. Not like a boss measuring performance, but like someone wanting to see who she really was, her essence. Later, at the hotel, a welcoming quietness. He wrote on a note, "If you're not too tired, I'm in the restaurant area." She went, a simple dress put on by reflex without a plan. Seeing him there with a glass of water in his hand, everything in the day seemed to lead her to that moment. They sat side by side, talked first about the conference panel, then about future projects, and suddenly about life, about their personal stories. He told her about his younger brother, 6 years his junior, quick, intelligent, sensitive, who died at 15 from an infection detected too late. Zaid was still studying at the time, a young man. He swore to himself that he would invest in education and technology, not just for efficiency and progress, but to preserve lives. Because complex systems fail when people are ignored, when there isn't a human touch. Elara didn't respond, she just nodded, deeply understanding the pain. When he held her hand, it wasn't an unexpected gesture or a hasty impulse. It was a calm, careful, almost casual touch, and yet something in her trembled. It wasn't fear nor doubt, rather a long-forgotten security, a feeling of belonging. Not protection, but arrival. It didn't ask for answers, it allowed questions. In the elevator, nothing but a smile, brief, warm, full of meaning. At her room door, she thanked him for the evening. He thanked her for coming. A light touch on her arm, and he left, leaving her alone. In the room, she took off her shoes and went to the window. The rain fell gently on the courtyard stones. The city was reflected in the drops, creating a spectacle of lights. Elara touched her lips without noticing, not because of a kiss given, but because of something within, like a door that finally unlocked, revealing new paths. Without promises, without haste, a new quietness, now with direction. She stood at the window for a long time. The rain stopped, but the ground still shone, as if it had absorbed the unsaid, all the suspended words.
Fingertips on the cold glass, seeking support in transparency, in clarity. There was no desire to name what she felt, nor to analyze, just to be, to feel. Peace and a tenuous yet strong thread between trust and possibility, between what was and what could be. The next morning, the air was clear and fresh. Portham Bay appeared rare, bathed in a soft light. Elara had coffee alone, unhurriedly, savoring the moment. Zaid passed by later, greeted her with a nod, but sat at another table, a deliberate, respectful gesture. Their eyes met only once, and that was enough. Nothing needed to be explained. What was growing between them didn't ask for a name, just time and the opportunity to blossom. The conference continued its course. Elara spoke with representatives from Northern Reach, presented innovative approaches, showed complex graphs, talked about neural networks and self-learning systems. Confident, clear, not harsh, but with authority. She heard whispers of admiration here and there. Impressive, we didn't imagine. The comments touched her little. She no longer worked for external recognition. She had reached something much deeper and more significant, knowing what she does and why she does it. In the taxi to the airport, side by side, without crowding or formalities. The driver was silent. The radio played softly. Zaid on his phone until he placed it on his knee and looked out the window. Before, I lived in airports. I felt like a shadow, always in transit, never truly home. Perhaps because I never felt I belonged anywhere, Zaid, she said, reflecting her own journey. He nodded, not with pity, just a deep, shared understanding. At the boarding gate, little movement, the calm before departure. They waited in silence amidst other conversations and distant noises. Zaid wrote something in a small notebook, the handwriting angular, neat, and precise. He closed it, put it away, and asked, looking at her, "If you could, would you go back to your old life, Elara?" She looked at him, a sparkle in her eyes. "Not for a single day." He smiled, a warm smile. "Me neither." The flight was smooth, gentle. Soft clouds passed beneath the plane's wings. Viridia City approached, its lights twinkling in the distance. It was already night upon arrival. On the way to the baggage claim, a moment of closeness without touch, just by the way they walked, side by side, in sync. No distance, no obligation, a silent agreement of souls. He accompanied her to the taxi, opened the door with a gentle gesture. Without words, silence filling the space. She rolled down the window. "Thank you for everything in Portum Bay, Zaid. Thank you for showing yourself, Elara." A nod, and the taxi departed, taking her back home. At home, a different, more welcoming silence. The clock read 9:17 p.m. She left her bag, took off her coat, walked barefoot through the living room. On the sideboard, the book she hadn't opened in weeks. She returned to the marked page. The words were the same, but they sounded different, perhaps because she herself was different, renewed. In the days that followed the conference, much remained the same, but nothing was common. She felt the change in the tone of her colleagues, in the way Zaid approached her in meetings, in the way she herself made decisions and positioned herself. She began to bring her own ideas, to propose innovative solutions, to question the status quo. No one laughed, no one openly doubted her ability, and if anyone hesitated, she no longer waited for permission to act. She simply acted. One afternoon, near the end of the workday, Zaid entered her office unannounced, unhurriedly, his calm presence filling the small space. He sat opposite her, surveyed the room thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about our next big project. It will be on the south of the Solara coast, in Spain, a new port innovation center in Malaga, a technology hub." "When?" she asked, eager. "In 4 weeks. I want you to lead the entire structuring and implementation phase." "What if I say no?" she challenged him, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Then I'll find someone with less talent and vision," he replied, with a playful glint in his eyes. She chuckled softly and nodded, the decision already made. "I say yes, Zaid." He stood up, went to the door, and before leaving, turned his face to her. "It will be different there, warmer, noisier, more chaotic than Viridia City." "I'm not afraid of heat, Zaid," she replied, with a new firmness. Alone after he left, Elara stood by the window for a long time. She wasn't thinking about the flight, nor the details of the work, only about a phrase Lyra, her mother, had said when she was still well and lucid. "When your heart begins to tremble, my daughter, you are close to where you belong, to your place in the world." Elara touched her chest. There was no tremor. There was a low, continuous fire, a strong, burning flame. And that, she knew, was enough. The heat in Malaga was different, vibrant, pulsating. It shimmered on the glass facades of buildings, danced on the wide and bustling avenues, mirrored in the skyscrapers like 1,000 small shining suns. In the lobby of Omnicorp Insight's headquarters, Elara stood a step behind Zaid as assistants checked badges and organized documents. Inside, it wasn't empty. It was an intense vibration of someone who knows they're taking the next step, even without absolute certainty of where it will lead her, but with the conviction that it's the right path. The days passed at a steady pace, filled with an intense routine, strategic meetings, dynamic presentations, deep conversations with teams from various countries and cultures. She listened more than she spoke. She wanted to understand thoroughly before reacting, before proposing solutions. Zaid introduced her as the essential link between complex systems and people, the vital connection. Not as an interpreter, nor as a manager, but as an indispensable bridge. Some nodded, understanding. Others, curious, watched her closely. No rejection, no disdain, just observation. And with that, she could cope peacefully. The official appointment was simple, without great formalities. A small room, a brief and sincere speech from Zaid, and 2 signatures on the document. Director of Cultural Operations, Central Europe. The words on paper were grand, imposing, but not strange. Upon signing, Elara didn't feel the classic ephemeral pride. She felt a deep alignment, as if something in the world had finally fallen into place, in perfect harmony with her purpose. Zaid was nearby all day, without invading her space, but with a constant and discreet presence. He gave her room to speak, move freely, make her own decisions. Still, his presence was a discreet compass, a silent but powerful support. In the evening, at the hotel reception, there was a card on the counter, waiting for her. Tonight, 8 p.m., terrace, just the 2 of us. No signature, unnecessary, as she knew who it was from. The night on the terrace was of a dark blue city, sprinkled with golden points of light. Below, life pulsed silently and broadly, a constant rhythm. Zaid waited for her, seated at a table in the corner with the most privileged view. Time passed, slow and steady, without grand promises, but with daily choices, significant and full of purpose. When Elara closed her eyes, she felt a gentle movement inside, a small, soft, almost affectionate kick. Her hand instinctively went to her belly, a gesture of deep connection. Zaid noticed, looked at her questioningly, his eyes searching for an answer. She smiled, a smile full of light and hope. They remind me that everything moves forward, that life continues, renews itself. He responded without hesitation, with a warmth in his gaze that enveloped her. And that you no longer need to go back, Elara. This is your place. This is your time.